Today, I'm going to be telling you about my experiences within trying to cope with panic attacks. Being a single father with trauma in my life and having anxiety, I've had my fair share of panic attacks, and I want to share with you on how I've been able to deal with it so far. Without further ado, thank you for letting me vent with you. Welcome to the Single Father Podcast. I am your host, Kendall Donaker. This podcast is dedicated for anyone out there who's dealing with mental health and fatherhood. You'll hear about my struggles, my defeats, my victories, my highs, my lows, my triumphs, my tribulations, and everything in between. I like to call this a collection of journal entries into my struggle and adapting to single fatherhood. Without further ado, let's take a look inside my journal, the Single Father Podcast. So, how I've been able to cope with panic attacks has been a very long journey for me. But I think it all really stems from how I've been able to cope with depression and anxiety. And it goes all the way back to high school for me. All my life I've been kind of that, charismatic, happy-go-lucky guy. And I never really saw myself as someone who could ever be anything less than that. I'm not sure the exact moment it started, but I know it was right around my parents' divorce where I felt my first bit of massive anxiety come along. And that was extremely interesting for me because anyone who's had panic attacks, you know that it feels like you're dying or the equivalent of what a heart attack would be, right? So when I had my first panic attack, I was 100% certain that I was dying and I was, having a heart attack. So I, called, my mom or my dad, I forgot who it was, but, I said there's something wrong. So they dragged me to the hospital and they said, well, sir, there's nothing wrong. I think you just had some tension. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Well, you've had a panic attack. And I'm like, no. There's something wrong with me. You don't understand. There's something wrong. Like there is physically something wrong with my heart. I can feel it. You don't understand. I was getting pissed off. And then my mom brought me to another doctor. They said the same thing. So you're just having a panic attack. Now, I'm not sure if anyone else have had this experience, but when you know something's wrong with your body, it's like no one knows your body better than you, right? So I kind of got pissed off by everyone telling me it's just a panic attack. I didn't know what that was. Anxiety, I don't know what that was. I'm the happiest person on earth. How can you tell me that I'm having anxiety or a panic attack right now? It's unfathomable to me. There's something wrong with my heart. And of course, I did what a person should not do. And I Googled it. And then, of course, Google comes in: stroke, heart attack, death, heart disease. And it all kind of just perpetuated my belief that there was something wrong with my heart. So suddenly I'm looking to see if I can get, heart medication. Suddenly I'm eating Cheerios because they're good for your heart. I'm going on runs more. But then as anxiety tends to kind of consume you, you notice that it consumes other parts of your life as well. Suddenly I can't run as much as I used to, because when I run and I feel my heart racing, and my heart races, I get anxiety because I know what that means. And so I'm running and I'm trying to catch my breath and I'm having a panic attack while I'm on the treadmill. Unbelievable. Now, think about that. You're taking a run, your heart's already elevated, and then you start to have a panic attack. It's extremely uncomfortable. So I'm like, fuck, can I not go to the gym anymore? Every time I feel my heart elevating, I'm anxious. I'm having a heart attack, right? And then it consumed other parts of my being as well. Every time I'm in a public setting. I remember oftentimes every Sunday my mom would take me to church, and when it comes to like getting up and singing, I'd have a massive panic attack and I feel like my heart is racing out of my chest. And I'm like, can I not even I can't be around people. Like this is horrible for me. I was convinced. I'm telling my mom there's something wrong with my heart, and I get pissed off at her. I'd want to cry. I'm like, you don't understand. and you'd kind of feel like the crazy person in the room. Like you're having like a manic episode. Like there's something wrong with me. You don't understand. Quit telling me nothing's wrong. Quit telling me nothing's wrong. Blah, blah, blah. It would piss me off. And I would, and then there was other things, it affects you sexually as well. You're trying to have sex or something like that, and for a man, you know what it means when they call it whiskey dick, right? Instead of whiskey, it would just be out of panic or anxiety. And I can't, so I would be extremely kind of just immersed with depression at this point. I can't have sex. I can't go to the gym. I can't be around people. I'm just going to become a recluse until someone takes me seriously about my heart. It's just unfucking believable. And it'd blow my mind. It really would. I would get into this panic state where I, I just felt like I couldn't talk to anyone. And so everyone's telling me, "Oh, man, like just smoke more weed, right?" Especially that's what you do in high school. You just smoke more weed. And around high school, I don't really know the first time that I've ever smoked weed. I don't remember that moment, but I do remember in high school, I was very comfortable smoking weed. No problems at all. Made me feel great, blah, 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 just like everyone else. But there came a moment where out of nowhere, during my kind of panic, I'm smoking with friends, and then boom, I had the most massive panic attack, anxious thing you could ever imagine. And I'm like, well, that was weird. I hope that doesn't happen again. Then the next time I smoke weed, boom, happens again. I feel like I'm dying. The next time it happens, even worse. I feel like I have to call the ambulance. My friends had to physically restrain me from calling the ambulance on myself because I felt like I'm having a heart attack. Now, again, when you are convinced that you're dying in this panic state, there's nothing that could convince you out of it. Every single time I have a panic attack and feel like I'm dying and need to go to the hospital, it ends and I'm fine. Every single time. And yet every single time I say, no, 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 this is it. This is it. I'm really dying this time. And then I'm fine. And then the next time, no, 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 this is it. This is it. I'm really going to die this time. I can feel it. And then I'm fine. And yet, even though I know I'm going to be fine, every single time I'm convinced that I'm dying. And that would happen all the time, especially when I smoke. So I remember one time I'm smoking weed with my friends, and they just, restraining me or not, they could not convince me of it. I called the ambulance. I said, I am fucking dying. I need to call the ambulance. I need to go to the hospital. I know myself. And I was so convinced of it. I convinced my friends of it too. Like, man, damn, maybe maybe he really does need to go to the hospital, But as they heard the ambulance came, they scattered. And they watched me from afar get in the ambulance truck. And the worst part about it is, as soon as the ambulance came and they were speaking to me, I felt myself getting more calming down more and more, relaxing more and more. It's almost as if their presence calmed me down and calmed my heart down. And every single time they would say, and when you say every single time, you called an ambulance more than once? Oh yeah, I did. I did. There would be times where I would sit there with my eyes closed and be like, come on, you went through this every single time. You're fine, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. But yet it would just beat out of my chest, my heart. It would. And I just thought to myself, I'm getting older. I'm going to die. People in their 20s do have heart attacks. Like, you'd convince yourself of not, I wouldn't convince myself of all the reasons I'm going to be fine. I'd convince myself of all the reasons I'm going to die. So there'll be a few times I've called the ambulance on myself. Not anymore. I've got a better control over that. But yeah, there's been a few times where I had to call the ambulance, and every time they came, my heart calms down and they say, hey, you're elevated, but you have plenty of air due to your age. I do no heart history. I think you're fine, dude. And that would happen, And then it took a very, very, very long time, and a therapist actually to convince me that there's nothing wrong with my heart at all. It's actually just depression, anxiety. And I needed to figure out how I deal with some of these issues. It was eye opening. I remember that. The moment where I finally accepted that there was nothing wrong with my heart and that it was just anxiety. It was a surreal, I mean, look up the definition of surreal. It was a surreal moment for me. It really was. To know that all this time I thought something was just wrong with my heart. And really there was just something wrong with my mind, my spirit, my soul. I needed to realign that somehow. So the first thing that they tried to get me to try was Prozac, which is an antidepressant. I didn't like it. I didn't like it for many, 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 many reasons. The first reason is, and what I didn't know is that there was different types of medication I could try instead of just stopping cold turkey. What I didn't know is that, first of all, the side effects, some medications more than others have side effects. The side effect that I was on is I would have a headache when I woke up in the morning from the medication. I would feel more tired than usual. Well, first of all, any type of serotonin or anything like that, antidepressant for men, it means that your sexual arousal doesn't come so, how do I say it? It means you don't have like a huge sex drive when you're taking these types of medications. For a man, again, you guessed it. You can't, you don't usually get hard because you're not really into it, you know? So that was a little bit difficult for me because I'm a, 22, 21-year-old guy that, wants to have fun. So that was one of the main reasons I stopped. And the other reason is when you start to feel happy, or again, you think, hey, I can just stop this medication. And then when you stop, it makes you feel weird and blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like, have you ever had an what do you call it? An antibiotic. When you have an antibiotic, they tell you, hey, even if you start to feel better, keep taking it because the symptom or whatever can come back, if you have like strep throat or something like that, right? So even if your throat feels better, keep taking it because it could come back if you don't finish the round, right? So every time I started to feel happier on these medications, I would just stop cold turkey. And, it made me feel horrible and blah, blah, blah. So I just stopped. I'm like, hey, I'm in college. I can't have all these symptoms and side effects. So the next thing they helped me with was they gave me Xanax. I've always been someone who is afraid to die, clearly, with the anxiety that I have. So I've never been someone who messes around with pills, and I've never been, to be honest, the only thing I've ever done in my life is weed. I've never done shrooms. I've never done coke. I've never done anything like that. I've always felt like acid, Molly, I've always felt like if I do it once, I'm going to die for sure. Like the anxiety, I know that my elevated heart rate could not be, it would just fuck me up. You know what I mean? If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has the tools to allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. So I've never been one to mess around with things that could kill me. So I remember I got prescribed Xanax and all my friends were happy. They're like, oh man, give me some Xanax and things like that. They're like, Xanax makes you feel amazing. To me, that was kind of confusing because when I took Xanax, yeah, you feel super fucking chill, but I it I couldn't do anything, right? I'm just slumped. I didn't feel like going out on a date. I didn't feel like going to the gym. At the time, I was a really big gym guy. I'm like, I can't go to the gym like this. I can't do shit. If you take Xanax, you're just a fucking, you're slouched. And that's always how I felt. So I really didn't like taking Xanax just because I'm not able to do anything. And I didn't really like relying on it. It was always kind of scary. Like, let's say I have like a fucking drink or something like that, and I need a Xanax, and hey, I was drinking, and I just don't like messing around with things like that. So that wasn't it for me. Meditation, I've always had a problem with meditation, even though I'm desperately trying to get into it now. Just sitting there on my knees or on my ass and just kind of sitting in one spot, clear my mind. I feel like when I do that, I invite more things into my mind, not less. It's kind of just, you know what I mean? The only thing I could really do is kind of just force myself to go to the gym. So I would force myself desperately to go to the gym. I'm like, I'm going to be the biggest gym rat in the world. I'm going to just take it easy. I'm going to just try to go on little walks, little runs here and there, and just force myself to really get into it. And that was the thing that kind of worked for me, is going to the gym. And I noticed that the healthier and the more active I was, the less anxious I felt. And I cut out things in my life that made me anxious. I remember, anyone who follows this podcast, that I've had an issue with my parents. So, hey, no more parents. I'll cut them out, right? And just kind of leave that out of my life. No more weed, I don't care whether I'm not the cool guy in the group. I'm not going to smoke weed with you guys because it makes me anxious, right? That was a struggle because I'm in college, right? But I cut it out. No more weed. I drank a little bit more, which, hey, you're in college, so I kind of justified that. But I would work out and I would just feel mentally better, right? And then I remember more things came along with that. I remember, I couldn't go on runs, but I remember the more active I was in the gym, I could go longer on the treadmill without feeling like I'm going to have a panic attack. I remember I could go to church or be in a social setting where I'm not kind of panicked by everyone around me. I noticed that, some things that would give me panic attacks before were suddenly less likely to do so just because I'm more active. And I was meeting with my therapist, and she says, the people you hang around with are like good food and bad food. The better the people are, the better they are for you, and vice versa. And she says, and that also means, in the literal sense, mind what you put into your body. If you're eating like shit all the time, you're going to feel like shit. If you're eating healthy, you're going to feel healthy. You're going to feel empowered. You're going to feel just overall better. So I started watching what I eat. I cut out the things that I felt like were making me feel sloggy. So no more burgers or, carne asada fries after a long night of drinking. That was my go-to, by the way. I don't know if you guys know where Roberto's is, but I would go right out to Roberto's after I get hammered at a bar. And I started really just being mindful of what I put into my body and what I have around me. Later in my life, I would get into spirituality and just kind of, focusing on stones and crystals and things like that. And it's funny because I really felt like those things were so stupid and weird until you actually started to realize the meaning of manifestation and, goals and things like that. What do I want in my life? How do I manifest it? What stones and crystals help me manifest it? What stones and crystals help me be more calm and grounded? What stones and crystals can I put in my body or put around my body to, heal me and, clear my mind, to bring me more prosperity, money, happiness. I started learning more about my astrology sign. What does it mean to be an Aquarius? And I'm like, wow, that is dead on. And you start to learn more about yourself. And I think that was the more interesting, right? Because when I first thought that I was dying and there's something wrong with my heart, what it really tells me at that time is that I didn't really know myself. I wasn't aware of myself and how I was really feeling. And that was extremely interesting to me at a later life because now I feel like I'm very grounded with my own body. I know what things will make me anxious. I know what things will make me sad. I know what things will make me angry. I know what things will make me happy. I know what I need in my life. I know what I don't. And I practice those things. I practice little by little going to the gym. I practice little by little going on runs. I practice little by little doing some meditation. And even now, when I have my kid, it's extremely hard and stressful. The breakup with her mother, being a single father, doing this on my own, it's all really, really hard. And it just makes me sad sometimes, that I'm in this position of being a single father. But I know that if I continue to work on myself, it'll get easier, you know? And it does make me tear up sometimes because, life doesn't always go how you thought it would, right? And sometimes I get anxious. Sometimes I get stressed. And sometimes I feel like, man, am I dying? So I don't really have, the exact answer on how each individual person should deal with their own anxiety. But what I can do is tell you my own personal experiences and tell you that you're not alone on it. It's been an extremely challenging journey for me. And all I can do is focus on the future and keep moving forward. I embarrassingly have one of my favorite movies in the world. Is called Meet the Robinsons. It's like this Disney movie, but the message within the movie is keep moving forward. Life will always try to get you down. Life will always try to point you in these various different directions. And what you can really count on is that you should never go back. You should always just keep moving forward. I've had someone that I think I brought up before, but someone brought up a really amazing analogy to me, and it's that when you're in a storm and you have this whole plethora of things going on around you, always know that there is calm within the storm. So there can be chaos all around you. There can be shattering glass. There can be heartbreak. There can be depression. There can be darkness around you. But the calmest place in the storm is right in the middle, where you get to watch all of those things happening around you, but feel complacent knowing that you can keep moving forward and wait out the storm. Because the storm will pass. It will pass. And you don't have to go towards the things around you. You don't have to move backwards. You can keep moving forward and be at peace. There's always calm within the storm. And that's kind of what I live by. That's kind of what I, base my life around is, that even though there's chaos around me, I can be calm. I can trust in the plan. I can trust in the universe, whether it's God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. Keep moving forward. So this is kind of, my own journal. It's my venting release. It's my healing. It's my, this is how I relay my feelings to all of you, is just by this podcast. And maybe you guys can find your own type of thing as well, whether it's a journal, whether it's a notebook, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's meditation. And don't be afraid of medication either. I mean, I think people are always, judgmental of people taking medication. I still take antidepressants because at a later time in life, I found that what's more important to me, feeling better or wanting to, party, I guess was what I'm trying to say. And I just finally said to myself, hey, I can't do this alone. God, I need your help. Friends, I need your help. And hey, doctor, I need your help. I can't do it alone. So I found an antidepressant that works for me, and I'm taking it, and I actually don't feel depressed anymore. I get anxious, right? But I don't have panic attacks anymore. It's because I'm learning more about myself. I know more about myself now. And I'm able to figure out what I need in my body as opposed to what I don't need, right? And so as time goes on, I hope to eventually be off those antidepressants and be able to cope completely on my own. But I don't want anyone out here to feel embarrassed or ashamed that they have to know that they can't do it alone. Sometimes you need help. And speaking to someone is extremely helpful. Speaking to my therapist and telling her all my bullshit is extremely helpful because, hey, that's one person that can't judge me, right? She just offers me advice. That's amazing. I'm taking the steps. I'm in therapy. I have my outlet, this podcast. I have the people around me. I have the good people, the healthy people around me. My daughter makes me feel good. Life makes me feel good, It's just because I keep moving forward. Even if things get in my way, I know that the storm will eventually pass. And that's what allows me to be calm within the storm. So I don't know if that was necessarily helpful as it was just kind of sharing my story, but hopefully it brought comfort to anyone who's listening. Please go ahead and I don't usually do this and I should start. Please follow us on our social media pages. You can follow me personally at Kendall Donaker on Instagram. Please follow the podcast at the Single Father Podcast. You can also follow us on Facebook as well. Like, subscribe, share, leave a comment. If this episode or any episode resonated to you, comment, like below, please. It really helps the podcast grow. Thank you to everyone who's been supporting me. And, without further ado, thank you for allowing me to vent with you.